Today is April 4, Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation. My name is Vasil Samakhvalov, and now we will be talking about the Chernobyl zone. We will be talking with Yevhen Kramarenko, head of the state agency on Ukraine on exclusion zone. You know that we commemorate the anniversary of the occupation of Kiev region, Zhytomyr region, the north of Chernihiv and Sumy region, and it's been 1 year of the occupation of Chernobyl zone, which was captured during the first month of war by the Russian military, who were staying there, who were doing things there. So what they did, how was this year after the occupation? So this is what we're going to talk about now. I'm having a question of a general nature. So what's the condition of Chernobyl zone now? What can you tell us about it? Well, first of all, I want to remind you that on the 31st of March last year, the occupiers left Chernobyl zone. On the 1st of April, the last tank left the Chernobyl nuclear power plant zone. 1 year ago, on the 4th of April, the management of the state agency, in cooperation with the specialists, we had a trip to Chernobyl zone, but due to the destroyed infrastructure, we were going through Makarov, and the road took us one whole day until the very late evening, and only on the next day, using the boats to crossing the river, because all the bridges were destroyed, we were only then able to reach Chernobyl zone. So I want to show you a brief presentation of what we've seen when we got there 1 year ago. First of all, I want to remind you that within the 36 years before that, there were measures taken in Chernobyl zone related to mitigation of the consequences of Chernobyl catastrophe. Is the confinement shelter. There was the construction of the storage for the processed nuclear fuel and its transportation. There was handling of solid and liquid nuclear waste, the handling with the different types of nuclear fuel, dosimetric control of this area. The work was related with prevention of fires, and I want to remind you that Chernobyl zone covers the territory of 2,236 square kilometers, and more than half of them are forests, and 85% of them is the Chernobyl natural reserve. There was also tourist activities there and scientific activities deployed in that area. On the 24th of April, there was an unprecedented event in the world history, the full-scale invasion, full-scale war, another phase of war that started, that engulfed Chernobyl zone 2. Chernobyl was hit by the rockets. There were strikes on the border posts, and the territory of the Chernobyl zone was occupied by the Russian military, and at 5 o'clock in the evening they captured the territory of Ivankiv district. Now this presentation showcases the pictures that we've seen when on our way to Chernobyl nuclear power plant. I'm reminding you that we were going through Makarov district, and we were setting up the temporary river crossings. This footage was made by one of the people who was left in occupation. That was a rocket launch again on Kiev. So that was the way the checkpost was looking in a month after the occupation. Destroyed bridge across River Bush, the damaged buildings, destroyed buildings. This is the building of the state agency in the exclusion zone, the semi-destroyed offices, vehicles, a lot of equipment stolen. So any venues that were visited by the occupiers were not left intact. So this is the territory of the automobile base, automobile depot, where there was a sufficient number of the fire trucks, firefighters trucks, that were all stolen and driven away to Belarus. This is the system of radiation control. The servers were stolen, the laboratory equipment was damaged. Chernobyl nuclear power plant was left intact just in part because there was our personnel there, and secondly, there was management of occupiers based there. They started pillaging the facilities only within the last days when the management left, and the soldiers started loading everything they can. They started looking at the offices, they started searching them and stealing even the teapots. So when we arrived, the personnel of nuclear power plant already cleared the area to a certain extent. So this is the territory where 169 National Guard servicemen were kept, who were guarding the nuclear power plant. At the beginning of occupation, they were locked in the anti-radiation bunker, and they were not let out. The majority of them are still in Russian Federation, and their destiny is unknown. They were all taken to Russian Federation. They were taken away 4 days before we arrived there. So this is the main radiation object in the exclusion zone. It remained intact. So we found the traces of occupiers. Those are the infamous trenches. And there is the underground post-localization of nuclear waste in the Red Forest. Yes, exactly, in the Red Forest. They just dug the trenches there. This area is still covered in these trenches. So this one in these photos was located in a very hazardous spot. So this is the vector facility for handling of nuclear waste. They all remained intact. The administrative buildings, they have some insignificant traces of the presence of occupiers, but the servers were damaged. The centralized storage of the processed nuclear fuel also remained intact. The consequences of occupation due to the destruction of infrastructure, the personnel of Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which 99% of whom reside in the city of Slavutich, they go to the nuclear power plant within 7 hours. Well, this is what it takes them to get to their place of employment. They used to do it through Belarus, but now they cannot use that way. The equipment of the radiation laboratory of the ecological center, which was handling the localization of the nuclear waste and study of other materials, was destroyed. The monitoring system for radiation control was destroyed too. All of the venues were pillaged in the town of Chernobyl. Almost all of the computer hardware was either disassembled or pillaged, so the infrastructure was destroyed. A vast territory is mined for the time being. It's contaminated with mine. We created the international mission for the support with the support of foreign international donors. We take measures for the recovery of the exclusion zone, and according to our plans, the territory of the exclusion zone will not only recover, but we will improve it. It will take us about 1 to 2 years to improve its condition, that it looks better than it used to be before occupation. In cooperation with the Ministry of Environment, we developed the recovery plan that is being currently adopted in the state level. It's coordinated with our donors. It's been filled with funding, and the measures to be taken for the recovery will start being implemented with the support of international community. What is already recovered? We recovered the radiation control in the checkposts to ensure non-dissemination of the radionuclides. We recovered the licensed operation of the enterprises which handle the nuclear waste. There are drones provided, and the process of handover of fire trucks is underway for the exclusion zone. Those fire trucks will in part replace those stolen, and we are going to refill our fleet and to improve its capacities. This dosimetric equipment is being resupplied. Food and other supplies are being delivered to cover the needs of our personnel. So these are the photos of the aid being handed over. That vehicle is the mobile laboratory handed to us by the United States, which allowed to renew the dosimetric control in the checkposts. So the consequences: people after the occupation and during occupation and during the recovery, the things that were necessary for proper recovery, for re-establishment of nuclear and radiation safety and security, so that representatives of the personnel, they proved their loyalty, that they kept the operation of the nuclear facilities in safe mode. There is unprecedented support by the international community. Those 150 servicemen of the National Guard of Ukraine, they originate from Slavutich. They are still imprisoned by Russian Federation, so we keep track of that situation together with their families. Thank you. Well, thank you. If we have any questions from the floor, well, please introduce yourself. Good afternoon, Yana Koloda, Ukrinform. You mentioned that there will be measures taken to improve the conditions in the exclusion zone. So what are those measures? What are those steps? Who are the donors? And where the funding is coming from? We have already approved the funding for recovery of the exclusion zone in the approximate amount of 100 million euro. We are only going through initial stages, initial phases, and we are currently at 15 million. But the overall recovery plan is counted for 225 million euro. Well, the first step would be the demining of the territory, then creation of the scientific hub in the exclusion zone, the replenishment of the computer hardware, office hardware, the renewal of a, well, give me a second here. Well, the recovery of firefighting machinery, decommissioning of Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Well, I think that that's about it. So replenishment of equipment for handling of radioactive materials. Well, I just wanted to double check, do I understand it correct that the development of this plan is currently underway with the Ministry of Environment? The plan is already developed, it's ready. In cooperation with the Ministry of Environment, we developed the strategy for development of the exclusion zone, and we coordinated with other parties involved. After that, the plan will be forwarded by the Cabinet of Ministers to the Parliament for its approval. At the same time, we fill the project with funds for the exclusion zone. The microphone, can you please pass the microphone over there? Thank you. The main donors now are the European Commission, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the Department of Energy of the United States, it's Norway, Britain, Germany, and now in April there will be a big meeting with the donors in Oslo, Norway, and we hope to expand the support and cooperation during this meeting. Thank you. Well, and another question. There was information in the media that to investigate the unstable structures of the confinement object, the amount of funds in amount of 1 million euro are required, and the French partners, they expressed their interest in this project. Well, we tried to do everything that we can by ourselves. We have already agreements ready. The ambassador of France recently visited the exclusion zone, and we were talking about this issue with him, but there are still no signed documents in this regard. Well, it's not only France who supports us there. We're talking about filling that account of support for the exclusion zone. The funds of the European Commission will be forwarded for the recovery of the exclusion zone, and one of such measures is the investigation of unstable structures. Do you need interpretation from English? Well, there is an...
Good morning, my name is Lorenzo Cremonesi for the Italian daily Corriere della Sera. Sorry, of course Europe was very much interested from the beginning, from the catastrophe, original catastrophe, and they contributed for the building of the famous sarcophagus. Can you tell us what is the situation of the sarcophagus today? And secondly, can you be more precise, because I didn't get it. You say you have a plan of 100 million euro, then you spoke about 250, then you said that you already got 50. Can you tell us how much Europe gave you, how much amount, and what are planning to give you, and be a little more precise about the planning of the expenditure for the plant? Thank you.
Well, let me start with how this amount was calculated. After the deoccupation of the exclusion zone, we made an inventory of the equipment that was either damaged or stolen. Well, the amount was 1.5 billion hryvnia. Part of that equipment was obsolete, part of the equipment cannot be procured anymore. So we calculated that if it will be the new equipment acquired, it will cost more than 3 billion hryvnia. So we communicated that amount to the European Commission. We communicated all the steps to be taken for the recovery of the exclusion zone. But again, I want to repeat myself. It's not only about the recovery of what's destroyed, but in some cases is some steps for improvement of current situation. Now this fund is being, the account is being filled, and depending on the capabilities of that fund and the operation of the European Commission, we will be able to say what will be, how these funds will be spent. We don't only work with the European Commission, but we also work with other institutions, and the key figures, so 100 million euro is the losses. The plan of recovery costs more than 200 million, so that we're going out of this catastrophe stronger and better, and the money that we have already either received or are already approved to be received, it's about 15 million euro for the time being. As to the 15, yes.
Britain, America, etc. But can I ask you how much money you got since the war, since the deliberation? I mean, since April last year till today from Europe?
Okay, we already received in 2022 around 2 million euros, and more than 10 million euros we already approved support from different donors.
So 2 million euros from Europe. From European.
No, it's different donors, USA and Europe different.
And you cannot tell me how much from Europe?
From Europe?
Yeah, only from
around
Europe.
1 million, half of this amount.
Thank you.
And you asked about object shelter.
The sarcophagus.
Yes, sarcophagus, it's the same, that object shelter that was built in 1986. Yeah. So the stability of this construction is proved by the end of this year. So after this period we don't have guarantee whether it will be stable and whether there will not be any accidents. So now we should evaluate the stability and try to prolong this term. Otherwise, if it's impossible, we should very fast dismantle unstable constructions.
Because I remember, I was there on different occasions, even before the war, to visit, because, you know, for Europe this is a major story. And they already were saying that the sarcophagus had to be repaired, changed, rebuilt. They were already planning about that. So I assume that after the war, even more, no?
Of course, it's our occupation, and we should do it for safety under new safe confinement, and we are trying to do it now, not for Ukrainian budget cost, because it's not possible. Unfortunately, now we are trying to involve partners to these tasks.
And in any case, if now that you give me this figure, you say from Europe 1 million, and you say that you need 250 as a final, is nothing. I mean, you're...
No, it's a start of...
it's a long process.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will ask another question from myself. Do we have a total amount of losses verified by the law enforcement agencies? Because in one way or another, those losses should be added to our claims against Russian Federation in the end of the conflict. Well, currently there was an inventory held in the exclusion zone. The results of that inventory was forwarded to the law enforcement agencies. Now we have the method of technique for calculation of losses, and according to that technique we launched the procedure of calculation. We have the amount of calculation, but it's not yet in compliance with the new technique. And I have another question. What is the security situation in Chernobyl zone? Whether it's possible to get there for a tour? How do the local civilians move around the area? How is it different from what it was before? Well, taking into account the security situation in terms of the radiation material, radioactive materials handling facility, is 100% secure. As to the tours to the exclusion zone, within a week before the beginning of the full-scale war, the state agency issued a resolution on termination or suspension of tourism into the exclusion zone. It's not yet resumed, and no such tours were going on since then. Well, there were only tours by the teams of journalists, by media representatives, but it doesn't have any mass nature. So the area of exclusion zone cannot be visited by third persons who are not either employed or visits the area for scientific reasons. We have more questions. Novositnik Katerina, Вечерний Kiev newspaper. Do we have any details how those events in the Red Forest influence the personnel of the employees of the nuclear power plant? Well, first of all, the Red Forest is located several kilometers from the facility where our personnel was located, and the personnel of the nuclear power plant who were fulfilling their duties, the occupiers didn't let them out of their offices. They were living there, they were taking meals there, they were kept in their places where at their workplaces where they used to work. So we didn't investigate any such impact, but I can tell you for sure there was no significant effect. So those trenches dug in the Red Forest, it only influenced the occupiers. Well, obviously it affected the occupiers, but we didn't investigate them. There was a number of investigations by the international teams. They were studying the soil there, their movement and how it influenced everything. But as to the persons who were directly involved in that activities, we did not investigate them. Are those trenches, are they already covered? No, they are still in the same condition. It's grown with grass very quickly. And we took the resolution that we should not either move that soil or cover it otherwise. Do you want to add something? Just a couple of words. When we've seen those trenches, we were impressed by the attitude of the occupiers to their soldiers. So the people who were living there for the month, they received such hazardous particles that most likely they will be dying either slowly or quickly. So the most hazardous radiation is not something that you get from outside, but something that comes from the inside. So if we don't have any more questions, let's wrap up. So we were talking about the Chernobyl zone and what's its condition after the occupation, and we will be seeing you in 1 hour. Thank you. In half an hour.